The previous four in-depth films examined Talanov's Model T, Gulenko's Model G, Reinin's criteria, and Bukalov's Model B as later proposals in the Model A field. Vladimir Ermak asks an earlier and stranger question. Where did the 8 aspects come from in the first place? Not their familiar symbols or their places in Model A, their semantic basis. In a 1997 article, Ermak proposes that the 8 aspects are not a received list. They are a construction from 4 primary realities of subjective interaction: objects, space, energy, and time. Each has an essential side and a relational side. 4 times 2 gives 8. Ermak tries to say what division of the world makes an element necessary. This episode reconstructs that proposal, not as hidden canon, not as established psychology, as an unusually ambitious answer from a major but under-transmitted Kyiv tradition. The 8 aspects were meant to be derived, not merely named. The core source is public and dated. Ermak's 1997 article, The Interaction of the Human Psyche with the Surrounding World, the Aspect Structure of the Information Flow. 3 later public articles let us follow its consequences. In 1999, he separates type studies from socionics proper. In 2007, he distinguishes 3 different uses of the word time. In 2008, he describes a method for verifying a TIM hypothesis. So this is original commentary on a public Russian corpus, not an English translation, nor is it an attempt to decree which element semantics are correct. Ermak makes large claims that his construction captures the structure of information flow and that a model-based procedure can verify type. We can reconstruct those claims faithfully. We cannot quietly promote them to evidence. What new obligations does this construction place on ordinary element talk among specialists? Ermak's work belongs to the Kyiv current, usually called the School of System Socionics. The school dates its own formation to 1991 and presents an Augustinovичute Medvedev-Ermak lineage. This is the school's account of itself, not a settled map of intellectual priority. What distinguishes Ermak is the scale of the wager. He does not simply defend Model A against later elaborations. He tries to provide a systems account of what an information aspect is doing there at all. His starting point is interaction. Something in the world affects a person through signals. The psyche constructs a subjective model of the situation, then returns speech, action, expression, or another response to the world. Information is the measure of that interaction, not a bag of personality traits. His preferred labels are names for roles in a system, not type description refinements. The next slides reconstruct that system before testing what it can carry. Ermak begins with 4 primary realities: objects, space, energy, and time. The construction is deliberately uneven. Objects and energetic states are presented as what the senses meet directly. Space, he argues, is calculated from information about the position and form of objects. Time is then calculated from changes in objects, space, and energetic states. He's not starting from familiar logic, sensing, ethics, and intuition labels. He is asking what a psyche must organize to build a subjective model of a changing world. That yields objects, things, and their material use, space, the arrangement and constraint of things, energy, states, and intensities, time, change itself. Ermak calls these primary realities, borrowing Medvedev's language of first building blocks. They are the macro aspects of the incoming flow, not yet the 8 aspects of Model A. The decisive second step is to say that each primary reality contains two different kinds of information, the thing itself and its relations. For Ermak, each primary reality has essential information and relational information. This does not create a new eightfold partition. In the standard three-axis derivation, the 8 aspects arise from judgment, perception, external, internal, and extroversion, introversion. Ermak's 4 realities reproduce the first 2. Objects are judgment about external content and give logic. Space is perception of external content and gives sensing. Energy is judgment about internal content and gives ethics. Time is perception of internal content and gives intuition. His essential and relational split is extroversion and introversion under a new name. Ermak's novelty is an ontological grounding of the same structural partition. He replaces 2 abstract axes with a theory of objects, space, energy, and time, and keeps the third. A weakness is clear. His starting point is asymmetric. Objects and energy are directly sensed, while space and time are calculated. A derivation that begins asymmetrically and ends in a symmetric eightfold structure owes an account of why. Ermak's 1997 map, with conventional aliases beside it. For objects, the essential aspect is work, conventionally, extroverted, or business logic, tools, and material for activity. The relational aspect is system, structural logic, structures, classifications, and systems of objects. For space, the essential aspect is will, volitional sensing, force, boundary, pressure, defense, possession. The relational aspect is comfort, sensing of sensations, fit, harmony, inconvenience. For energy, the essential aspect is emotions, ethics of emotions, excitement, mood, affect, intensity. The relational aspect is relations, ethics of relations, sympathy, antipathy, ethical valuation. For time, the essential aspect is possibilities, intuition of possibilities. The relational aspect is events, intuition of time. Ermak treats objects and energy as sensory inputs, space as calculated from object information, and therefore rejects sensing as its macro aspect name. He treats intuition as hiding change through time. These glosses expose a semantic theory under labels we treat as self-evident. The most unfamiliar consequence is Ermak's treatment of time. In the 1997 map, intuition of time is labeled events. Its content is the relation between possibilities as the world changes, realized opportunity, missed opportunity, trajectory, outcome, and the meaning of an occurrence in a changing field. In a 2007 article, Ermak says socionics has been using the word time for 3 different things. First is parametric time, a past, present, future coordinate used in decision and action. Second is time as a macro aspect of information flow, change in objects, space, and energy. Third is current time, the duration consumed by information processing itself. The distinction separates 3 claims usually bundled together: a function's relation to temporal change, a decision's location in time, and the runtime of cognition. They are not the same claim. This is more useful than a generic debate over the meaning of intuition of time. A derivation only matters if it constrains something beyond vocabulary. Ermak's proposed chain runs from a world and its carriers of signals to a primary information flow formed through the senses, to a subjective model of the situation, and then to a secondary flow, speech, action, expression, or another response. That response changes the world and becomes feedback. The 8 aspects are, in his account, the structure in which the psyche differentiates its interaction with the world: Model A is meant to constrain how a person handles a structured flow. If an element is renamed, extended, or redescribed, what interactional role has changed? Which relation is lost, added, or reassigned? This does not make his own map true. Its ontology and split are contestable. But it makes the disagreement precise, not merely poetic words, but the model of interaction those words preserve. Ermak's 1999 article supplies an important restraint on this system's language. The person is not the model. A person, in his terms, includes a TIM model and individual informational filling, biography, learned material, culture, competencies, and circumstance. Surface appearance cannot settle the underlying model. This is why he separates type studies from socionics. A phenomenology can collect patterns. A classification can arrange them. But an observed cluster of traits or signs remains underdetermined until an account says why those observations follow from a model and what would count against it. Appearance gives a hypothesis, not a completed identification. The 1997 derivation is relevant because it tells us what the model is allegedly modeling, not an inventory of traits, but the structure of a person's subjective interaction with objects, space, energy, and time. That creates a difficult practical question. How would one test the hypothesis without simply fitting the person's answers back into it? In 1999, Ermak reports a typing experiment in which sign-based approaches did not converge on a stable diagnosis. He offers it as evidence that recognizing external signs is not enough. The analyst must test a model. The report cannot settle that question. In the public article, it is a single authorial account, not an independently replicated study with a protocol that lets us audit its sampling, coding, or disagreement. But the pressure it identifies is real. A sign can produce an immediate hypothesis. The same sign can be explained by biography, profession, culture, performance, or the analyst's own expectation. Without a pre-specified contrast between rival models, recognition can become confirmation after the fact. That is where Ermak's experiment belongs in the episode, not as proof that his verification procedure works, but as a concrete reason he thought phenomenological typing needed a stronger method. The unresolved question is whether his own black box method produces the convergence the sign-based approach did not. Ermak's 2008 answer is a proposed black box procedure. Almost anything can generate a TIM hypothesis: physical presentation, speech, repeated expressions, ideology, self-description, or familiar behavior. But in his terms, all of that remains provisional. The next step is to address an informational aspect in a targeted question, compare the respondent's reaction with the predicted response of the hypothesized model, and revise the hypothesis through repeated comparison. Here, blocks rather than isolated positions may respond together. This is useful even if unvalidated. A serious type claim should name rival hypotheses, the intervention, the expected difference, and the rule for recording a mismatch. Ermak also identifies a genuine danger. The interviewer can lead the respondent towards the answer that confirms the type already suspected. Recognizing that danger does not solve it. A narrative interview can reduce direct pressure while increasing interpretive freedom. The missing test is independent. Blinded protocols, pre-specified contrasts, multiple analysts, and results that disclose disagreement as well as agreement. This is where Ermak becomes a useful fifth voice in the series. Talanov's Model T, Gulenko's Model G, Reinin's criteria, and Bukalov's Model B are different later proposals about the Model A field. His construction gives us a pressure test for all of them, including his own work. When a proposal adds a dimension, a criterion, a subtype, mechanism, or a new name for an element, what exact distinction does it add to the model of interaction? What does it allow the theory to rule out? Which response or contrast should be different before the interpreter knows the answer? That is a higher standard than merely sounding richer. It does not dismiss theoretical innovation. It asks innovation to specify its modeling debt. Ermak's 4x2 construction has the same debt. Why these four primary realities? Why precisely this essential relational split? What rival construction would better organize the same phenomena? Those are the questions that keep the episode critical rather than devotional. The source articles are public, dated, and available in Russian. Yet in English-language socionics, what often travels is a label, comfort, system, events, or a familiar diagram. The argument that generated the label is much harder to find. That loss makes disagreement shallow. People debate whether an aspect really means this or that, without seeing the construction an author was trying to defend. Ermak's map gives us a concrete alternative. Aspect semantics can be derived from a theory of the world, the psyche, and their interaction. Translation should not only find equivalent labels, it should preserve the chain of claims behind them: world, perception, interaction, aspect. Making the proposal legible lets specialists decide where it breaks and whether a rival school can better account for the same 8 distinctions. A source-led account becomes useful when it carries over the underlying question, not merely its preferred vocabulary. Vladimir Ermak's most valuable intervention is not a new box in a model. It is the insistence that the 8 aspects should answer a prior question. What structure of interaction makes these distinctions necessary? His answer was objects, space, energy, and time, each divided into essential and relational information: work, system, will, comfort, emotions, relations, possibilities, events. It is contestable at every major step: the 4 realities, the derivation of space and time, the split, the semantic links, the bridge from energy to ethical valuation, and the route from model to verified type. It deserves recovery not as untouchable canon, but to make the field's assumptions visible enough to argue with. When an element is described, renamed, or extended, ask, what model of interaction does this preserve? What alternative does it exclude? What could show it wrong? Ermak gives us a map. The work now is to test whether the territory can bear it.